Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. This is your host, Shane McInnes. Welcome to Quarantine Day Unknown. Hope everybody is doing all right, doing well. Welcome, everybody, to the show. I'll riff here for a little bit, hopefully, so that the room will fill up just a smidge. My title is so long the phone won't display it. Yeah, so I actually had several different ideas about what I wanted to call tonight's show. So we're going to be discussing the genus of Homo and the larger sort of picture of the evolution of humanity, and try to dispel a few rumors that, of course, float around. So one idea that I thought about naming the show for today was Cogito Ergo Sum, the good old-fashioned Rene Descartes. All homo, bra. Yeah, total homo all night. So, the Rene Descartes statement, I think, therefore I am. But then I actually realized that that's actually not that great of a descriptor here because of what we've kind of learned about some of these other homo species. I thought of Are We Human or Are We Dancer? But I don't know how many people are really big fans of the Killers. Killers are one of my favorite bands. So I settled on Dr. Strange Thumb, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love My... How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love My Expanded Brain Case, which I thought was a fun little title. Kind of captures my sense of whimsy. To let everybody know, I have decided that I'm going to leave the door to this bedroom open tonight. Brittany has talked me into potentially allowing the puppy to come in, and she's actually curled up right here beside me, and hopefully she'll be okay. She gets a little antsy if she can hear me but can't see me. And it turns out that she was spending a lot of time on stream, like fretting up in the front of the house because she could see me as Brittany is watching, but like could not get to me. Mr. Brightside has been on the charts in the UK since it came out. And man, I know I love the Killers. I think they're great. But I don't know how many other people would have gotten Are We Human or Are We Dancer. I don't think a lot of people that know that song even get the actual reference. It's to Hunter S. Thompson thing. But yeah, the pupper is in the room. She might make an appearance if everybody wants her to. But I said that to note that this was not my attempt at shameless puppy peddling to increase viewership. It is purely to help the puppy's nerves so that she can calm down and not be in an hour full of panic. Okay, so... welcome again to the third episode here, officially. We've had some pretty good success. Why not both? We've had a lot of success. I was pretty pleased at the turnout for everything, so I hope everybody is enjoying these. I am sort of expanding my retinue of connectivity here, so you can see that I have added this little line right here. So below my line where it has my email address, you now see that I have ventured into the wider world of social media. So I now have a Twitter and an Instagram. They are both at Some History Guy, which I thought was, again, pretty good. So if you want to follow me there, I'll be posting on Instagram. Usually I'll be posting pictures of places that I've been or things that I've seen. I've actually started working on yeah. And I know that the follow button is up here. And if you're interested, pro streamer, I'm your first Twitter follower. Awesome. On Twitter, what I'm going to be doing mostly is sharing cool things that I found. I've got a lot of Google alerts that feed me cool little archaeology things and history things and anthropology things. And if I find some of those that I think are potentially interesting, I will spit those out. Hey, Alex. This isn't technically for class, but you're welcome to hang around. We're just going to be talking about history stuff. Am I hating myself? That's a hard question to answer. I'm officially a twit now because I have a Twitter. I jest. I think that I could use this for good. I don't think that I will become tainted by the dark side, but we shall see. I don't know. Who knows? All right. So to also kind of let everybody in on some sort of developments, I've also started working on the idea. Oh, thanks, Kyle. Oh, cool. Now I have an Instagram follower too. Awesome. It was official long before now. What, that I was slipping to the dark side? I would totally be a dark sider. I would be a Jedi for just as long as it took me to get stuck in traffic. And then it would just be like, yeah, I'm bored. I'd rather learn than just sit around. Hey, man, that's great. We're talking about stuff in a much more relaxed version than I do in class, and a lot of stuff that I probably couldn't get away with in class. Oh, that I'm a twit. Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that. Not at all. So another development that I'm working on, I have started a Patreon page. It doesn't currently have anything on it, and it's not currently published. What I would like, because one of the problems that I'm having here is sort of figuring out how I would use this. If you have any, I'm actually trying to keep my language PG. I don't know. I might slip up and drop an F-bomb. It happens. I might say a wordy nerd. But one thing that I would ask, if you all have any ideas of what you think might be worth throwing something like $1 my way on Patreon. If you have any ideas about that stuff, let me know. I already have one idea that I'm definitely going to implement. That is going to be that eventually, after I get a little bit of a broader viewership, I'm going to eventually have special episodes. So usually like maybe once every other week, or once every 2 weeks or twice a month or something like that. I will be having a special episode, and people that are following me on Patreon or subscribers here on the channel, once I can let subscribers on, are going to be able to vote or suggest topics for a special stream. And I've already got a couple of those because I haven't forgotten the ones that were given to me on the very first stream. Those will be going on first. Those include trying to figure out how to work Frozen 2 into Viking expansion, Nestorian Christianity, and Egyptian Coptic, I'm losing my word here, people staying in monasteries, monasticism, Coptic monasticism. $1 is very frequently, hey, I like what you're doing and I want to keep you. Yeah, and see, that's the kind of thing, but I don't want to take advantage of that. I would like for people to feel like they're actually getting something from that. I would absolutely appreciate people just throwing me $1 to keep doing what I'm doing. But I do want to be very cognizant of the fact right now that financial situations are pretty strained for a lot of people. I don't want them to feel like I'm, kind of shaking the tin can. I'm actually in a fairly comfortable position right now that I still have a job and I'm still able to do what I do for a living. So it seemed a bit tone deaf for me to start kind of just saying, hey, if you want to throw me money, or just hang out with me for a while. Yeah, I have a potty mouth. Gabe has heard me say all sorts of stuff. Oh man. I actually need the adventure hat. Brittany, could you bring me the adventure hat? I left it up front, and I'll tell a fun little story. What happens outside of school stays out of school. Doe gotta go moderate another channel. All right, tell Daria I said hello. But I am broke, so feel free to give me money. I'm not the richest person in the world. I do teach public school for a living, so. I think Brittany is trying to convince the dog to bring me the adventure hat. Come here, Kaylee. Come here, Kaylee. Come here. The dog does not like wearing clothing. Can you just toss it to me? Okay. So to continue with the established trend here, if I tell stories of fun adventures, I will don the adventure hat, which of course has been with me for many years. So this is an added bonus story that has very little to do with any sort of actual history, just a fun little story. Gabriel D. May and I were actually on a trip together in 2015 in Jordan, and we were with several other interested parties that were on an archaeological trip to see cool stuff. And we got put grouped together. I was driving a vehicle. Gabe and two other students were in my vehicle. And we found ourselves being the sort of cynical bunch. And I created a game whereby the first person to drop an F-bomb in the day had to buy everybody else in the vehicle a Fanta. And then subsequently lost the game immediately because I was driving through Jordanian traffic, and these people are murderous on the roads. They don't have lines in the middle of their roads, and you can drive on whatever side of the road you want to. They'll also just walk out into the middle of the road and act like vehicles aren't coming down the road at 45 miles an hour. So I created the effing Fanta game and then immediately lost the effing Fanta game. It was good times. But adventure hat. So there you go. All right. So the Michael Jordanians, exactly. That was the name of our vehicle. 65 kilometers per hour, correct. Okay, guys, let's... Oh, man. I love you guys. This is good times. I needed this. It's been a rough week. So let's talk a little bit about some history stuff. And today we're going to talk about the genus of Homo, and what actually makes us humans. So to begin with, we're going to have to talk a little bit about evolution, and I know that everybody has opinions about evolution, and there are a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions about evolution, and just know that, as always, this is my opinion. It is, of course, based on a significantly large body of scientific fact, so you can take that however you desire. But we are going to talk about the concept of evolution from the perspective of what makes us human. And I can't find my folder that has all of my pictures in it, and that's disturbing me. Okay, so I had some pictures prepared, and I guess I'm just not going to have those. That's okay. So I'm sure that you all have seen the kind of stereotypical picture where it's a straight line and you see like this hunched over thing, and then it kind of looks like a monkey, and then the next one is like kind of a little bit more man-like, and then the next one and the next one and the next one, and at the end you have this guy like standing upright talking and being all big, and that image is garbage. It doesn't actually represent the way that evolution works, nor does it accurately display historical fact. That image is bubkus. You should chuck it. And if you ever see someone using that to explain evolution, they're not doing it right. Evolution of thong, evolution of thing. Thing with an exclamation mark. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, thing like, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so what is evolution? To fully explain that would take an entire discussion, but what we're talking about here is a very, very small incremental change between generations of species where mutations compound over time. right? So we talked about this a little bit in an earlier stream when we were talking about using DNA dating. This is in episode 1 if you want to go back and look at this stuff a little bit again. But the idea here is that human beings' genetics and the species that we are, Homo sapiens genetics, change a little bit every generation, right? Oh man, that is actually the evolution of thong there. Thank you, Mr. Krell. That is amazing. Anyway, so what we have here is a scenario whereby one thing can over time become another, but this is very, very slow. Oh, but your name is Mr. Krell. What am I supposed to call you? Anyway, these genetic species, or the genetic changes that we're talking about within species, sometimes don't always work. Sometimes you have a mutation that creates kind of a dead end. You know, this mutation might make you sterile and not be able to pass on your particular trait. It might make you more susceptible to the outside world and you die before you're able to pass on your genetics. So this is not a guaranteed straight line thing. Sometimes you have species that just don't make it for whatever reason. So if you look at the evolution of humans as we know it, it's a lot more like kind of this multi-pronged approach thing where there are lots of different species at the same time. Some of them make it, some of them don't, but it's not this straight line between chimpanzee and human. We're actually not related to chimpanzees directly at all. But what we have, though, is this genus that we call Homo, and this just means man, right? But there are a couple of terms that get thrown around a lot in this particular discussion. One of them is hominid, which ends with a D. If you hear someone reference a hominid, that is going to refer to basically all living descendants of, all living descendants from the original ape-like creature that we diverged from. So we're talking about here like humans, but also the great apes, things like orangutans and bonobos and chimpanzees and gorillas. So that's what a hominid is. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is something called a hominin, which ends with an N. And these are the things that will go on to become what we are today as humans. So to begin with, I do want to again clarify here that there is a lot of debate about this. Of course, there's the big giant debate that sort of sits on top of a lot of this, especially being where I am in Mississippi, about whether or not evolution is a thing or not. But even within the scientific community, the anthropological community, the historical community, there is a lot of debate as to how exactly a lot of these species are related. And part of the problem here is getting back to what we were talking about in episode 1, with the fact that it's just really hard for us to find remains. Right? We don't have an overwhelmingly large amount of physical material left behind from these species. Some of these species are only identified by partial skeletons. Some of these species, especially when we get back into the really early human ancestors, are only identified by things like jawbones or part of a skull or part of a femur or a part of an arm or some finger bones, right? So some of these Australopithecine species, which we're not going to be talking about because they're a lot more problematic, some of these are really hard to identify. And even within the genus of Homo, there is a lot of argumentation about which species actually evolved into what and which ones are subspecies of this larger species, or if they are actually an independent species of their own. And part of this is because we don't have genetic evidence. A lot of this stuff happens way, way back in time before we would even be able to get to the point where we could recover DNA evidence, right? So we're talking about stuff at points that's 2 million plus years ago. And there's no way that DNA is ever going to be able to survive that long in one of these fossils. So because we don't have direct genetic evidence, it's really hard for us to sometimes typecast these and put them in the proper taxonomy. So what I'm about to say is, again, very much my opinion, but I think it's a pretty informed opinion. I've done a fairly good amount of research on this stuff. I'm actually pretty fascinated by the concept of early humans and prehistory. Fun fact, taxonomy is only a science by courtesy. It's really just a humanities discipline. This is a joke. Uh, so yeah, there's even an argument about whether the taxonomic structure that we have is actually legitimate, or if this all just sort of developed out of the particular theme of the 1800s where everybody was trying to classify everything, right? Does any of this stuff really work as anything more than a learning tool, right? There's a lot of room for debate on this. So I am not trying to stand forth. I don't have a degree in anthropology. I have studied it quite a bit, and I like it a lot. That doesn't make me an expert. So as always with all streams, you can think that I'm full of crap. Please do if you would like. Okay, so let's start with the earliest arguable guy that fits into the Homo genus, and this is Homo habilis. I need to get over here to my notes. So Homo habilis. This guy, this term here, Homo habilis, means skillful man. Sometimes you'll see it translated as handyman or tool-using man. Latin is a crappy language that doesn't have a lot of words, and you have to kind of just use context. Everyone needs to make a name for themselves. Well, humans have actually done that. We've called ourselves Homo sapiens. So there we go. So Homo habilis is going to first show up, according to our debates, somewhere around 2.1 million years ago. And it's going to die out somewhere around 1.5 million years ago. And this particular species is first discovered in 1955. There is a type fossil that was discovered in Tanzania. And one of the things that I should note, and we can kind of use our Google Earth here. By the way, this program, Google Earth, once again, absolutely free. If you aren't using it already, you totally should. It's fun for lots of things. So the region that we're going to be talking about a lot today, it's easy to learn Latin. It's hard to understand it. It's hard to get the context of it because the words are used so weirdly, and one word can be used 3 different ways, and the order doesn't matter. Latin is a junk language, and there's a reason it's dead, except in the Catholic Church. So in this region right over in here, this area is... Tell me about it. This region is called the Horn of Africa, but this particular area that we're going to be particularly interested in is this region right here, and it is referred to geographically as the Great Rift Valley. And this particular plate of the Earth is actually pulling apart from this plate of the Earth, and that makes this big valley. This area is going to be incredibly important to the development of Homo sapiens as a species. It is going to be one of the earliest areas on Earth that can support the type of animal that we are, and a lot of the Homo ancestors of our current species are going to develop in this area, including Homo habilis, this region right over here. So if you are not familiar with African territory here, these countries, Tanzania is right here, and then Kenya and Ethiopia. Lots of discoveries in these 3 countries here, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Pretty big, very important area. I would love to get over there and do some digging. So there is some argument about Homo habilis, and it was originally given the Homo title not too long after it was first discovered. A lot of modern geneticists and anthropologists are trying to push this guy out of the Homo genus. They're trying to push him back into a predecessor genus called Australopithecus. So if you know things like Australopithecus afarensis or Australopithecus sahul or any of those other Australopithecines, some people are now classifying habilis as an Australopithecus. They're doing this mostly because of the fact that we've discovered more types of this guy. So we have more fossils now than we used to, and we've had a better idea of the morphology. and the phenotype of this guy. So basically the way that it looks and the size of it. It hasn't been completely pushed back yet, but I have a feeling that the more research that's done, it's probably going to end up back in Australopithecus. I'm going to still include it here clearly because I think that even if it is an Australopithecine, it's something that we are directly related to, right? This is one of our ancestors that we came from. So even if it's going to end up being Australopithecus habilis, I think we can get by and let him sneak in. Even though he is only about 4 foot tall. So one of the things that I want to talk about is a kind of a comparative size here. There are 2 ways that a lot of these hominins are compared to humans. One of them is by, just kind of height and weight. And then the other one is the brain capacity. Will allow it. Thank you. I appreciate the support. So this is the reference to brain case here in my title for the night. The expanding of the brain is one of the biggest kind of hallmarks of how these earlier species end up as Homo sapiens, right? And this has a lot to do with the way that they use tools and eat, and we'll talk about all of this stuff, and I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But Homo habilis has a pretty small brain case compared to humans. He's Wolverine then. He's short and he's hairy. I don't know if we know anything about their olfactory senses. It would be interesting if we found out that these guys had better senses than we do. I wouldn't doubt it, though. Human beings are losing our olfactory and our vision as we become more apex predators. So we can outthink stuff, right? Cogito ergo sum. So the Homo habilis, I'd be really careful where you're going with this. We're not going to compare Homo habilis to X-Men. I would not insult the Canadian race that way. So Homo habilis is going to max out at about 4 foot tall. They're not really going to have short, hairy people might have a thing or two to say. For those of you that don't know Dr. Krell, that was a little bit of... I've lost the word, but that word for making fun of yourself. Anyway, so what makes these guys handy, right? How do they get their name of being skillful or handy? Well, this is mostly going to be due to the fact that these guys are going to show up in what we call the Stone Age. They're going to be one of the earliest inventors of the Stone Age, and there are going to be the inventors. I should be very careful here. There is debate about whether or not these people are the inventors of, or if they were inheritors of something called the Oldowan culture. This is, where's my, wrong tab. Here we go. So the Oldowan culture is a self-deprecating, thank you, Fidelia, and welcome. So the Oldowan culture is a specific type of stone tool making. These are either the oldest or very, very close to the oldest. And again, there's some debate here. Stone tools that have ever been used by hominins. And these are very rough. They're not technically what we would call compound tools. So they're usually just like a sharp, pointy rock or a thin, wedged kind of rock. And what these are usually going to be used to do is butcher animals. And this is almost, well, I'm saying these things definitely, but there's a lot of debate about this. I should just make a blanket statement that everything else that I might say tonight might be potentially debatable. The working theory right now is that Oldowan culture stone tools are going to be used to butcher animals that had been already killed by some other predator. It's not suggested that Homo habilis is capable of hunting or stalking animals, though there is debate. But most of the time what's going to happen is that these smarter predators are going to run off other predators who have already made the kill, or they're going to happen upon this kill, and they're going to use these stone tools to butcher and remove the meat from the bone. We actually do have a few pieces of evidence of fossilized remains, especially of big mammals, that show parts where the bones have been chipped, that show a very clear pattern of butchering, which is pretty impressive considering how rare this must have been for this exact kind of scenario to exist, for these things to be preserved through history for us. So the stone tools that they're using, again, they're very, very primitive. They're mostly going to be made out of kind of flaky rock. They're not going to have a lot of durability. These might even be once or 2 or 3 time max use tools. They hadn't really figured out a lot of the techniques that we would see in more advanced cultures later on. But this is interesting stuff. So Homo habilis is going to show up right around the time that a lot of changes are going on Earth. And in general, things are getting a little bit warmer and things are getting a little bit drier, especially in Africa. And in the region that we've been talking about here, this kind of Tanzania, Ethiopia area, and sort of general, we can say Central Western Africa. This region over here is going to be turning into a new type of biome that we call savanna. And you all, I hope, are all familiar with savanna. I'm not trying to be insulting, but this is a varied type of landscape that has a lot of different types of animals and plants. And into this world, Homo habilis is going to be injected and tends to flourish because, again, these guys are around for about 600,000 years. Which is pretty long for a species. It's 3 times longer than we've been around. And if we keep going the way that we're going, I don't know if we'll make it 600,000 years. That's me just being a sarcastic jerk, though. So after Homo habilis, we're going to arrive at the frequently giggled at Homo erectus. Anybody want to go ahead and giggle? Ha ha ha, it says erect. Yeah. It's a nice place, not far from Atlanta. Oh, Savannah. Ha 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 ha. I got you. Thank you. Homo erectus. Homo erectus. This is Latin for upright man. And this, again, deals a lot with the morphology and the way that the hips and lower back and the base of the neck attaches to the spine and the feet are arranged. This has a lot to do with the mobility and movement of this particular species. This is going to be a person that stands more erect instead of more of a kind of a crouch or a hunch, right? The first Homo erectus is going to show up somewhere around 2 million years ago. And in most populations, they're going to be dead by about 300,000 years ago. There are going to be some Homo erectus that live over in this little colony in, I don't know what, phrasing. I was like, I don't know what that word is. Is that like the place in Indonesia? So over here in Indonesia, there's an island called Java, which is this guy right here. There is a population of Homo erectus that ends up living in this region until about 130,000 years ago. So they survive about 130,000 years longer. I'm sorry, 170,000 years longer than the majority of Homo erectus on the rest of the Earth. These guys are going to be notable for, well, I guess I just told you one of the reasons. They are the first hominins that get out of Africa. They are some of the first travelers. They're going to originate over here in the same region of Africa that we were just talking about. But over time, these guys are going to spread over most of the world. They're going to populate all of Africa. They're going to get into the Middle East, the regions that today like Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. They're going to get into the Mediterranean world and into the southern part of Europe. They're also going to expand through Persia and into India, some down here into the southern parts of China, and then down into Southeastern Asia. So these guys are going to be a lot more successful when it comes to diversity. And one of the things that we need to remember when we're talking about this evolutionary pattern here is that as these hominins are moving around, they're encountering new types of biomes. They're running into new types of living conditions. And where habilis doesn't appear to have been able to handle such a drastic change in their lifestyle. The later hominins are. And again, part of this is because of this expanding brain, right? With a bigger brain, you can process more stuff. And you are able to do stuff like plan. You're able to do stuff like, prepare for the future, save for the future. This idea of hoarding, which we've all kind of run into with toilet paper in the modern world, right? This is something that earlier hominins couldn't do because they did not have the brain capacity to do this. All right. So Homo erectus was first discovered in 1891, and the fossil actually came from over in Indonesia, around the area that I pointed to just a moment ago. Homo erectus is going to have several different subspecies, meaning Homo erectus is going to have a regional variant, if you will. Some of these are going to be a population over in Africa. Some of them are going to have a subspecies in Southern Europe. A very interesting one, though, getting back to short, furry people. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to do this on purpose. There is an interesting subspecies of Homo erectus called Homo I can't ever say this. Floresiensis. It comes from an island called Flores over in Indonesia. And when this was discovered, nobody really knew what to do with this skeleton, because they're like, oh, clearly this is a hominin, but it's way too small. Floresiensis. Yeah, it's hard to... I keep wanting to throw too many N's in there. Anyway, but these guys are now lovingly referred to as hobbits because they only got about 1 meter tall. Which is pretty neat. And this is the theory behind this that's working right now is that this particular subspecies had a really hard time in its native habitat, that the natural resources that were kind of a subcontinent similar to India. So a lot of this region would have had forests and jungles and would have been swampy because it's kind of low-lying, but would have had a lot of life living over there. So a little bit more about Homo erectus size-wise. They got a little bit taller than habilis. They're going to be about 5 foot tall. Some of the subspecies get a little bit taller. They get up to maybe like 5'4", 5'5". Some of them that get over in Asia, Asians, of course, always want to brag about everything unless it's how many deaths they have to coronavirus. That was probably a bad taste joke. They did lie about this, so I'm not going to take it back. Bad taste, though. I'll take bad taste. Anyway, some of the Asian species of Homo erectus, they say, oh, they're like 5'8", 5'9". There's not a lot of evidence to support that. They've got maybe 1 or 2 skeletons that say that they're that tall, and that's sort of outside the range of making a good case, right? If you've got 1 or 2 samples with the majority of them are smaller, this is not stats. You say evolved to be smaller, but I think ancient alien shrink rays. Aliens. I'll take ancient alien shrink rays. Sure, why not? So they're bigger in stature, Homo erectuses, than habilis. They also have larger brain cases, and this is going to allow them to make a lot of different technological advances. One of the biggest ones is that they create a new toolkit. And the toolkit that we're talking about here is called Aculean. And I can't ever spell this. For those of you that don't know, I have a lot of hard times with spelling. So I'll copy this and just make it bigger for you. Any words that have lots of vowels that kind of mush together, they really jack my brain up. That's why I couldn't say Floresiensis, because those letters all in my brain just go mush. So this is going to replace the Oldowan toolkit. The Aculean toolkit here is much more varied. You're going to see tools that are designed for different purposes than just cutting. You're going to see things that are going to be knife-like, so that they're used for holding and hand cutting, but also you're going to start seeing the evolution of things like hand axes. So you're going to have a difference between what you're cutting with this tool. And if I'm cutting something really hard, I'm going to use a bigger rock that I can get more force behind. But if I need some fine control and maybe I'm cleaning an animal, I'm going to be able to get a little bit more use out of these tools. But this is, again, a hallmark of better technology and expanding brain sizes, because we're going to be able to do more stuff. I don't know if this joke has been made because of the stream cutout for me, but Cow Tools Far Side. I don't know that reference. I apologize. Is it a reference to the Far Side comic? Quite possibly. I'm not sure. Homo erectus is also going to be the first hominin species to be able to use fire, which of course is amazing when it comes to developing stuff, because by cooking things, you can make more things eatable. Of course, this is going to mostly be used for gathered types of plants, especially roots and stalks and things like that. We're not sure how much actual meat that they're going to really be eating at this point, that they're not scavenging. We're still not quite to the point where we're going to be full out hunting yet. That's the next guy. So there is a theory out there right now that's getting a lot of traction that suggests that Homo erectus actually had the capability of making kind of rude or rudimentary rafts, so that they could actually cross small bodies of water. And one of the biggest pieces of evidence of that is that we have a pretty substantial Homo erectus population over here in Spain. And the theory is that they actually crossed here the Strait of Magellan on boats, because on clear days you can kind of see across this stuff. So maybe not. They could have also just walked all the way around. I know that seems a lot harder to get on board with, and they just made a boat and floated across. But making a boat is, I don't know, it's not as easy as just winning a thing and being on a boat with T-Pain. It's not that easy, even though Lonely Island said so. I'm on a boat. Anyway, bad joke. So again, Homo erectus comes from habilis. They were the first hominins that expand out of Africa. They have a very large range, and they're going to give rise to our direct ancestor. And that is a species called Homo heidelbergensis. Did I spell that wrong? No, I didn't. It just doesn't recognize it. Homo heidelbergensis. These guys are pretty spectacular. Homo erectus got around. You get the slow clap. That's a great one. Homo erectus got around. That's a good one. Okay. So heidelbergensis, the name here means Heidelberg man. This, of course, is going to be a giveaway of where it was first discovered, in Heidelberg, Germany. This type species fossil that we have comes from 1907. I just had to. That's fine. Jokes of all sorts are welcome. I'm going to try to keep my language PG rated. You guys say whatever you want to. It makes it more fun for everybody. Anyway, so heidelbergensis is going to have, again, several different subspecies. One of those subspecies is Homo rhodensiensis. This is the African version of heidelbergensis. That version is going to come on to be Homo sapien, but also there are going to be other species that turn into things like Homo neanderthalensis, which of course is Neanderthal. These are a very close ancient cousin to Homo sapiens. There is another species out there that's called the Denisovans. These are species that have been discovered over in Asia and in Central Asia and over into China. And originally they were considered to be a direct descendant of Heidelbergensis, but there's a little bit of question about that now. Some people think that the Denisovans are actually in a very early kind of proto version of Homo sapien. Their genetic structure has been pretty thoroughly sequenced. We've got a lot of it. This Heidelbergensis is close enough in time. Their time range, by the way, is about 700,000 years ago to about 200,000 years ago. So from their ancestors like the Neanderthal and the Homo sapien and the Denisovans, potentially, we actually have a substantial amount of DNA. And it's here that I'll make my my Neanderthal joke. So for those of you all that don't know, you can do genetic testing, right? And you can get your genetics sequenced. And some of them will tell you different things, but if you go to a particular site called 23andMe, one of the things that they record are actually how many Neanderthal pieces of DNA show up in your DNA. And I'm going to get in trouble with this, but it's a good story, so I'll tell it anyway. For a large portion of the early years of my marriage with Brittany, she frequently referred to me as a Neanderthal, which I could not fault her for. I am very clumsy. I'd not always consider it. I smell sometimes, and I can act like a Neanderthal. I'm not going to try to be shady here. So a few Christmases ago, she got me 23andMe as a Christmas gift, which was an amazing gift. And it came back that I am very, very tiny percentage Neanderthal. There are several hundred different markers that you can get, and I had very, very few of them. And I got very excited about my history and my past, and so Brittany decided, hey, I'm going to get my 23andMe as well. And guess who has way more Neanderthal markers than I do? I made the joke once and then never again until now. And of course, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hear about this afterwards. But all of this is part of a learning experience because this actually helps us. That's actually an inside joke if you all don't know. The grunting thing is, we had a friend do it for the content. That's right, I'm doing it for the content. Couch. I love you guys. Thanks for being on my side. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is that Heidelbergensis has multiple different descendant species, and that all of these species are alive at the same time. Modern humans, if you have any European ancestor, you have a really, really high chance of having Neanderthal DNA because these species were alive at the same time, right? We've already talked about 3 different hominins, and 2 of those, habilis and erectus, lived at the same time. And erectus and Heidelbergensis are going to live at the same time. So you have these populations where you can be in one place and see multiple different hominins. And this is, again, always there to kick me while I'm down. Thank you. What I'm trying to get at here is, again, this idea that you see this kind of little line of progression in a straight line in that good old-fashioned evolution chart. That's garbage. You have all of these different species. They're cohabitating. In many cases, they're competing for the same natural resources. In many cases, they're interbreeding. Because we have sequenced the Denisovan DNA, we know that Denisovans and Homo sapiens interbred. There's actually one skeleton. They just did genetic sequencing last year, and this particular person was a young girl, and either one of her parents was a hybrid Denisovan and Neanderthal, or her parents were Denisovan or Neanderthal. So even amongst non-Homo sapien species, we still have hominin crossbreeding. And this means that these species are a lot closer to us than we think about. So when you think about Neanderthal and you hear these, like the grunting thing, right? You know, like, oh, they're cavemen and they grunt, they beat people with clubs. Well, I mean, humans do that too, right? But there was an article that just came out last week where some anthropologists had discovered a Neanderthal body in a cave with string, right? So this completely throws loops into all of the stuff that we thought we knew about Neanderthals. If these people are capable of making complex stuff like string and rope, that the next step to that is, fashioned clothing, right? Or complex tools that are way beyond what we thought. So one of the things that we're learning as we are doing more anthropology is that we are not so different than Neanderthals or these other species, Denisovans. Neanderthals buried their dead, and even started doing that potentially before human beings did. There's evidence that Neanderthals might have had religion. Neanderthals had art. So maybe Neanderthals not as insulting as a lot of people thought it was, right? We're learning a lot more about these cultures. But I'm talking way more about Neanderthals than I am about Heidelbergensis, which is actually kind of the topic that we were supposed to be on, because we're trying to get to Homo sapiens. And it is important to note that even though a lot of Homo sapiens have Neanderthal DNA, Neanderthals are not direct ancestors of humans. We did not come from Neanderthals. We came from Heidelbergensis, right? We came from a subspecies of Heidelbergensis inside Africa. All right. So when we're talking about Heidelbergensis, we're getting up to looking a lot more like a human. We have a similar size skull and brain case. The average height for Heidelbergensis was about 5'8". The Heidelbergensis is going to be the first species that shows the use of compound tools. So we're actually going to start seeing things like spearheads, all right, which are fashioned and pointy, but they're designed to be attached to a shaft to be thrown, right? This is also going to give us evidence that Heidelbergensis is the first hunter. There's a little bit of an argument about whether Erectus could do hunting, but we know for a fact that Heidelbergensis was able to do this. They have clear evidence of hunting, compound tool usage, and there's even a growing consensus amongst archaeolinguists and anthropologists that Heidelbergensis might have had a morphology that would allow them to speak very close to the way that we do today. And this is kind of a rough science that's doing a lot of comparative anatomy that looks at the spaces in the throat cavity and in the bottom part of the jaw and the way that the mouth is formed, and comparing that to humans, and then trying to discern whether or not the internal structure of the body would have been able to produce sound the same way that we do. And because we don't have soft remains, it's really hard to say. But a lot of people think, Heidelbergensis was able to vocalize very similar to what we do, which of course is an amazing technological invention, right? The reason that I'm able to talk to you right now and you're able to understand me is because we have all these different noises that we can make with our mouth, right? And we can make a wider array of noises than a lot of different animals on Earth, which means that we can communicate much more specifically, right? Instead of having a bark that's for an alarm, or a bark that's for I'm hungry, or a bark that's for leave me alone, I can say, I don't really feel the best right now. I think I need to be alone for a little bit, which conveys much more meaning in a much more meaningful way, right? So if Heidelbergensis was able to vocalize, this is another sign that we're getting really close to us, right? So to kind of wrap up Heidelbergensis again, they are going to evolve from Erectus. They are going to show up in Africa somewhere around 700,000 years ago. These guys are also going to be big travelers. They're going to travel in all of the range that Erectus did, which again is southern and central Europe. The range of Erectus was southern Europe, Arabia, the Middle East, India, and China and Southeast Asia. Heidelbergensis is going to add to that Central Europe, Central Asia, and much further up into China. Heidelbergensis is going to have a much wider range because they can adapt to different scenarios. They have a more adaptive brain. They can change the way that they think and plan and move and do stuff. So this is going to make them a much more robust species. And finally, we come to where we stand today. We are Homo sapiens. I'm sure everybody is familiar with that, but just for continuity's sake, I'll throw that up here. Homo sapiens, which means wise man. I don't know if that applies to all of us. but I'll go ahead and give it to us. Anyway, so the Homo sapiens is wise man. We first showed up somewhere between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago. There's a lot of debate as to exactly when we showed up. There's a kind of an interesting fossil gap between about 400,000 years ago and about 200,000 years ago in Africa that has kind of plagued the anthropologists' prediction. Well, perhaps an accurate translation is the wise guy. Yeah, it was the wise guy. What you doing over there? I can't do the Brooklyn accent very well. That was my attempt. I apologize. I should stop doing it. What do you think I am? Leave the gun, take the cannoli. Anyway. So, Homo sapiens, wise man. Our first identifiable remains are from a place in Ethiopia called Omo Kabish, and they date to about 195 to 200,000 years ago. And of course, as Homo sapiens, we are able to do things that none of the other hominins did. All of the other hominins went extinct, and we're still around because we have a very high advanced brain capacity. We have incredibly advanced tool-making skills. We are lingual. We are planning, we are thoughtful, all of these great things, but we're also capable of great destruction because of our, so far at least, because of our ability to destroy things, we also can create new and better ways to kill people, which is pretty much human history, right? All right, guys, so that sort of wraps up our discussion for the Homo genus, well, in theory, yeah. So I would be happy to answer questions if anybody had any, or just if you all want to make comments. As always, by the way, I do very much appreciate the back and forth and the ongoing stuff that makes the stream better for me, and I think for everybody, to have a good, healthy chat going. So there is a little bit of a delay here, so I'll ask for questions and I can riff a little bit. The reason I talk about this in relation to history is because it's very helpful for us to understand our place in history. Because we are Homo sapiens and we are so wise, we forget basic things. We forget that we are animals. And I know that makes a lot of people very, very uncomfortable to be considered an animal, but we are animals. We have animal tendencies. We come from animals. We are animals. And it's also helpful for us to understand things about these other species so as to not get the big head, right? All of these other species have lasted longer than 200,000 years, and yet they still all died. And we are not invincible on Earth, nor are we guaranteed to live for 500,000 years as a species. One of the first things that I said in this discussion is that not every species that evolves makes it. And that is a very important idea to understand. And as we move through history, the awareness of that gets lost. Partially because the earliest humans had no concept of this stuff. But also people start thinking very grandiose dreams about themselves. And one of the stories of human history is how people that have very big opinions of themselves have taken over stuff. I think that we all know what happens when demagogues and people with narcissistic personality disorder take over the governments. On a long enough timeline, all species go extinct. Right. Is that a quote for something? I feel like I should know that quote. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate of everybody drops to 0. Is that from Fight Club? I think that's from Fight Club. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's from Fight Club. Which is a great book, by the way. And has a lot to do with the stuff that we're talking about today, about humans being animals and getting above our station and stuff like that. So, any other questions or comments? Just to give everybody a little bit of a peek on what happens next week. My statement sounds familiar, but I can't place it. On a long enough timeline, because this is the opening scene where Tyler has the gun in the mouth of the narrator, and you hear him narrate on a long enough timeline the survival rate of everyone drops to 0. I'm not breaking. I'm talking about a movie. I don't mention Fight Club. Anyway, so my thought for next week, great information. It looks like I'm going to have to join the session more often. Hey, come on, Alex. You're welcome. No, if you want to go back and watch the other episodes, there's a soft open episode where I tried to just work through a little bit of technological stuff. And I also talked a little bit about why I like history. And then the first 2 episodes are kind of how we understand history. The first one talked about how we understand prehistory. And then the second one talked about how we understand history once we started settling down and writing stuff. And you got the super abbreviated History 101 level stuff in class. I go into a much more detailed explanation of this stuff on my stream here. But you're absolutely welcome. So my thought for next week, and I'd love feedback on that, is to talk a little bit about migration. I'm not going to completely follow my pathway when I teach World Civ 1 and hit all of the same little things that I hit in World Civ 1, but I do want to talk a little bit at least about how we got where we are and sort of establish a base timeline for human history. So I'm thinking about doing human migration next week, but I'd be open to suggestion. So after that, I'm going to start trying to work towards having a special episode, which is probably either going to be on Monday or Tuesday night. If one of those is better for you all, I'd be happy to accommodate that. I think that I don't want to go purely just kind of World Civ 1E or World Civ 2E thing. I'm thinking a little bit more broad ideas. I don't know. I'd be interested in your all's opinion, but I'm a glutton for feedback. That's kind of the way that I am. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. You can message me or send me an email. My email is, again, right here. And if you want to, again, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Some History Guy. And you can click follow Medieval North America. I like to listen and absorb. Hey, that's fine. That's great. You don't have to participate in the chat if you don't want to. I'm not trying to get everybody to get out of your safety zone. I just want to be really super laid back. Would love for everybody to just learn a little bit, maybe expand the brain case, right? Okay, doke, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's going to be all for me, unless we have a little bit more. The history of artistic expression of toilet mechanisms. You know what? I actually have a really great diagram of that by a very popular modern artist that I would be able to bring on stream. You guys want to see the puppy? How about the puppy? What if we sign the puppy out? Kaylee, come here. Kaylee, come here. Come and see me. Come here. Come on. Oh, there's the puppy. There's the puppy. Oh, yes, the puppy. Oh, thank you for the slobbers. Oh, my goodness. You all cannot see this, but her tail is waggling at about 1,000,000 miles per hour right now. This is Kaylee. Her full name is Kaylee Fry McInnes. She's named after Kaylee from the really cool show Firefly, the movie Serenity, and the comics that are coming out now. Do it for the content. I greatly enjoy other people's pets. Kaylee is a mutt. She is part boxer and part something else and completely rotten. But the algorithm is happy now. All right, ladies and gents, we will sign off with a puppy. I think that might be the high point of the entire stream for everybody. So I'm going to pull a George Costanza and leave while the room is hot. I hope to see you all again next week. If you have any questions, you're welcome to send me a whisper here on Twitch or send me an email at mckinnistravels@gmail. And I really appreciate everybody hanging out and learning a little bit. Anything you want to send me or let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. Y'all have a good one, all right?